Funsize Show!
All of this whole conversation is like, whenever I started thinking about wanting to talk with you, because I've been waiting to talk to you for a while, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, by the way. I have lots of things I want to pick your brain about, but it's just kind of easing you into things.
Okay.
But I had been, obviously keeping tabs on what you're doing while you're out of the office on Instagram and stuff like that, and also, I knew that you all went to, was it Kennedy? No, not Kennedy. The NASA in Florida.
Oh, Johnson.
Space Center.
In Houston. Johnson.
Oh, yeah,
Space
not
Center.
in Florida. Yeah, in Houston, right?
Yeah.
So, and because of the photo trip, photo club,
camera club,
and so a friend of mine and I were driving in the car. My buddy Travis and I the other day. We're just talking about how many times you take a photo on your phone and you never go back and look at it. And it's just how much storage is out there that is just full of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And so made me think about what y'all are doing. You go intentionally on a trip to take a photo. And first question is are y'all primarily shooting film?
No, it's whatever anybody wants to shoot. So mostly it's digital, but I bring my old Rolleiflex and we'll take exposures. And the trip to Johnson City, that camera club trip, Sarah actually brought an analog camera and used it. I don't think she's had the film developed yet, so we haven't seen the shots yet. But it could be whatever you want to shoot with. The main thing is just we're going on a trip to take photos of things.
Right.
The focus is using your camera.
And so, but going into that, like I was saying, you take so many photos that of, whether it be on a DSLR or a phone, it's just easy because it's invisible. And so I'm just curious of what your perspective of when you're going in to shoot a shot, what is going through your mind when you're shooting a digital photo versus a film photo?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question because I think that's part of how Camera Club came about was because taking a photo now is just a reflexive behavior, and it's not really so much this intentional thing like it used to be. That was one of the goals, was to intentionally go out and explore a new place and take intentional photos where you're thinking about composition and lighting and shadows and learning the process of taking photos. I'm not a photo expert or anything, a photography expert or anything. And I had that I got a Rolleiflex, and it's old school manual. So I wanted to learn how to do how to use a light meter for doing
metering.
exposure, all of that stuff was completely new to me. So the thought process is pretty different. With the Rolleiflex, at least for me, I have to sit there and really think about what I'm doing. And it's real intentional. Whereas even with the camera, with a digital camera, that making it an intentional act and a trip where you're going for the purpose of taking photography, it's not reflexive. Everything you're thinking about,
because you're creating space for that. So it's not it could be less impulsive than you would be in another scenario.
Yeah, exactly. We have we'll have a road trip planned, and we'll have 3 or 4 cities that we want to go, or old towns that we want to go to. And so everything about it is intentional and like you said, creating space for the act of photography.
Very cool. Yeah. I think that, I don't know if you noticed, but my minor in college was traditional darkroom wet chemistry.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
And so I don't know. I thought I see y'all's trips and stuff, and it's really cool.
You're welcome to join if you want to come take pictures.
Yeah. Well, cool. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Tony Sanchez, a designer at Funsize, and today we have a newcomer. Today we have a brand new face. Welcome back to Funsize, which may not make sense to a lot of you, but it might make sense in a future episode. So stay tuned for that one. But welcome, Lee.
Thank you. I am kind of a newcomer in many different ways because I have been gone for a while. But I also came back with a different title. So I am,
Right.
and I kind of feel like a new employee in
Yeah.
many
What
ways. So
what is that title?
my title now is head of product innovation.
I like it. I like it.
It's really just a way of saying focusing on the product design or the product design and the design technology aspect of things, while Natalie's focusing on the brand experience side of things.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's like very rooted in what I want to talk about
Okay,
today.
awesome.
So yeah, I think it's going to be exciting. But I have another thought that has kind of been bugging me to get your opinion on and your take on it.
Okay.
And I don't know how much information you'll have on it, or if you have an opinion.
Okay.
But like ages ago, probably maybe close to 8 years ago, you came to Funsize and you gave a presentation on FlightAware,
Yeah. Mhm.
the flight tracker
Yeah.
product that anybody in the world can download the app and, look up at flights, right? You can see the air traffic going on all over the country and all over the world.
All over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with all of the kind of air traffic, airport woes happening, like, I don't know if you're hearing
with
about
the,
all that.
with the like the shutdown.
Like Newark is having
Yeah.
some very significant problems and whatnot. Like, what's your take on that? And like, how does that factor into, like, I know that's maybe very far back in your brain, like FlightAware, but like, I don't know. Like, do you think air travel is safe now?
I mean, yeah, I think for the most part it's safe, but seeing things like that happen, you realize it's sitting on the backbone of a really old infrastructure. But when you consider like how many flights there are, like statistically, like how many flights there are and how many crashes there are versus like how many cars there are and how many crashes and fatalities are, like,
Right.
still statistically speaking, it's a really safe form of travel, but it's anything that happens that go like it's
gonna be
scary
bad.
as hell. Yeah, exactly. But so mentioning FlightAware, that's the interesting thing about FlightAware back in the day. The way FlightAware was set up and the reason they're so good is because they let anyone purchase one of their little DIY, I don't know what they're called, GPS transponders, but it's like this little device that you can put together, put it on the outside of your window, and it can pick up the signals from planes. So they were essentially creating a mesh around the entire planet that could monitor airplanes 24/7, and it was like crowdsourced.
Yeah.
But I was, when I first started working with them, I was like, man, you guys realize what you're doing. You basically have made Google Maps for the sky. And their data pipeline gets used by pretty much everyone, like airlines, governments. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's some way for them to leverage all of that data to help bolster an aging infrastructure, or maybe transition it into something that's a little bit more modern and robust. I don't, who knows, maybe that's even happening as we speak.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you're right. I'm not an air traffic controller. I have no connection to the air industry,
Yeah.
but I can imagine that updating and innovating on infrastructures like that is like really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
Because everything's dependent, like, not everything, but a lot of things are dependent on that just running.
Yeah, it's such a huge, completely integrated system, and everything is built on top of it. You can't just like flip a switch and replace it, like, because there's so many interdependencies. We're going to go off topic a little bit, but it's kind of like a few years back when there was the silicon chip shortage, and everybody was scrambling to get chips because everything has a chip in it now.
Yeah.
And like auto manufacturers were having to completely change their timelines for releasing cars or cut features out of their cars. There are other alternative elements that can be used that are even better semiconductors than silicon to make chips. The problem with it is everything is set up to use silicon to produce chips. Right. So even though there may be better alternatives out there, there's an entire industry and world that's dependent upon the infrastructure that's in place to produce silicon chips. So it's kind of the same thing with the flight industry. Like you just can't just pull out a system because everything is so interdependent on it, even though there may be better alternatives out there.
Yeah. And not only like the systems themselves being dependent on that to work, but there's lots of dollars dependent on that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money and influence and power as well.
Like the infrastructure is built on top of the other infrastructure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Just like everything happening, you know, the next new thing you see on the newsreel is like, oh, planes are crashing, or this airport went dark for 30 minutes or whatever. It's like, holy crap, this is crazy.
It's just, it's very astoundingly terrifying. And I would never in a million years want to be an air traffic controller because how stressful of a job is that?
What's more stressful? The air traffic controller that's in the dark, or the pilot that's in the dark? Or the people flying that have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, luckily I wonder if they had to tell, if you're legally obligated to tell the people on a flight what's going on or not, you know, in that situation, or if they didn't know till they landed. I could not say which one is more stressful. They will both have to be just real scary. Yeah, real hard jobs to have.
Yeah, I'm thankful for the job that I have now.
Same.
Well, awesome. Yeah, it's just all that stuff just been kind of marinating in my brain with like, I know that you're connected to, had experience and expertise in that area, and also the film photography stuff too.
Yeah.
But like thinking about, you know, your new role and whatnot, and everything that you do here is, I think, based pretty deeply in creativity. And I think that's been pretty inspiring for me and grounding for me and a lot of other people. But what I wanted to talk about is like the importance of practice, play, and passion.
Okay.
Because one of the things that you just, well, not happen to do is like you have a very deep understanding of code. And you can make things in code.
Yeah.
And then you experiment in code.
Yeah.
And make and just make random stuff.
Yeah.
And so like, has that always been your vision of how you interact with design and technology?
Yeah, I think so. If I think, I mean, I'm thinking, you got me thinking back in history of trying to draw a thread of where it all started. But my degree is in computer science. So I started off, you know, as an engineer. But even before that, I was super into Flash. And, you know, back in, do people even know what Flash is even more? Anyway,
somebody out there will.
Yeah. You know, like that aspect, what I loved about that was that it was all, you could do these really cool animations. Like you could create graphics and then animate them, but it had an underlying scripting language, ActionScript. And that's really how you could unlock some really cool interactivity and make games and stuff like that. So even before like I was formally trained in writing code, I knew that aspect of understanding the logic or understanding how code works could like open up your creative possibilities even more than just drawing something on the screen. And I think because I grew up drawing my whole life, like some of my earliest memories are of drawing. And because I've always like had a pencil or a pen in my hand, I actually prefer, if I'm drawing something or like in that form, I would prefer to do it physically rather than digitally. I have an iPad and Procreate and stuff like that, but given the choice, I'm always going to use a pen or a pencil to do some drawing. So I think when it becomes digital, it just tends to be much more expressive and fluid for me if I'm thinking about it, not with a digital pen, but with, you know, writing lines of code. Yeah.
So whenever you like, was there a moment where you recognized, I don't know about recognize that and then started to use like the ability to write in code to express yourself that way? Like, was there a defining moment where you're like, I remember this is the first cool thing I made, or the moment where you're like, holy shit, like whoa, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was when I was at Frog and I was working on the HP Touch Smart project. So this was right after the iPhone came out, and HP was developing an actual. It was really just a giant iPad back, before iPads existed, but it was a huge touch screen, and so they wanted basically the iPad experience on, this giant the iPhone experience on this giant iPad. I was lucky enough to be put on that project, and I was in charge of writing the layout and the animation engine for this thing. And I think it was then when I was trying to come up with all of these different, do a horizontal scrolling layout, do a fan layout. I eventually just wrote this engine that could basically take a list or a thing of items and just kind of lay it out any way it needed to be, and it could animate between a fan to a grid, and it was all kind of fluid. And I think that's when it clicked on me of like this is I'm grokking the connection between visual and code, and look at all this super cool stuff that you can do with I was able to dream something or think something and then express it, actually see it happening.
How many times do you? Okay, because if you grab a pen and paper and you draw something, yeah, cool. Maybe I'll come back to it. Maybe I won't throw it away. It goes into a notebook, or is this another page in a pad or whatever? How often does that happen when code? When you're like, oh, I'm making this thing, and either you get stuck or I don't know. Does that happen? Is it the same? Is the process the same? I don't know.
It's a little bit more. No, it's not one-to-one. It's a lot. I have sketchbooks full of just doodles and stuff. I don't have projects full of doodles. If I'm doing that, I think it's a little bit more intentional and a little bit more planned. You definitely are doing little prototypes and stuff like that. But for me, because I'm not as good or as fluent. For me, it takes a little bit more time to develop something cool. So most of the time, if I'm working on something, I'll see it through to completion, as opposed to having something that just kind of halfway works.
I see.
Yeah.
How has that impacted your process as a designer and a design leader, honestly? Through experimentation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like on one level, it kind of makes me a little bit of an outlier, because I'm not just a pure designer, and my background is in code. So I came at it.
Okay, well, I think that's a good point of inflection right there.
Okay.
So if you said your background's in computer science, and when at Frog you were primarily working. I was
a design technologist. Yeah, I was implementing design.
Okay, yeah. So when was that defining moment of I'm a designer? As of capital D, I'm a designer.
I still struggle to call myself a capital D designer. Yeah. But
I was just saying the other day to my wife, I was like, you ever have those days where you just feel like a fraud? And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, what happened? I was like, can't put a finger on it, but today I feel like a fraud.
I've been doing this for 20 years, and that's still, I don't think that feeling ever goes away. Yeah. I think if you have that level of self-awareness, I think you're just always reflecting and thinking, am I just making this up? But I would say, when did I start thinking of myself as a designer? Probably when I left Frog and joined 1323. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I got the opportunity to actually start doing design rather than just doing implementation. Yeah.
And so I imagine now we fast forwarded to the point. And so you had all this experience of, experimenting in different ways through code, and then using your designer brain probably pretty heavily there, and maybe didn't even know it. And so now, if you had to think about how that processing your approach affected your design process, what does that mean?
I think that some ways that it affects me is I think I have a more concrete material understanding of how design choices impact implementation choices. I can I know I can see doing this is going to have this impact, or not in terms of effort for an engineer to do. And I guess it gives me a better understanding of like what technology or platform might be a better choice for a particular design solution, things like that. Another thing I think that comes easily for me that some people I think don't, that some people struggle a little bit with is understanding how everything fits together and flows together, and not just like in terms of like going from screen to screen, but like seeing things in motion, like being able to see a single static comp and be able to see into the future of like, okay, here's how all of these different pieces could animate. Here's how all of these things will be connected together architecturally to form an entire experience. Like, I think that kind of stuff is it's almost like instantaneous. Like when I look at something like that, and I think that definitely has to do with the fact that I've spent so much time on the other side of it, hooking it all up and making it, thinking about all those edge cases and those states and everything.
Right. So I love that. It sounds very technical. It sounds like there's a lot of things going on in your head whenever you just, like you said, looking at like a static design, you're like, oh, well, if this, then that, and then building on top of that. Is that still playful to you?
Yeah, I love it.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a giant puzzle. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard, but it is fun and really, really gratifying. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, like, to kind of come back to where we started, like, I believe that leaving room to be playful and to just have fun as much as we can, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that we always could make more time for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's I know for my own self, you get caught up in the rat race of like deliver.
And you're never taking a pause. You never stop to enjoy the amazing thing that you have made for a client because you're just right on to the next thing. It really does turn into like a hamster wheel.
Yeah. So how do we do that? How do we make time? How do we make time to play?
That's a good question because clients aren't interested in paying you to
right.
I mean, well, I take that back. I think that there are ways that you can work it into a project, but you have to be intentional about it. Otherwise, you will get caught up in the hamster wheel. But when projects go really well, I think I notice it's because everyone is enjoying themselves and finding ways to inject playfulness into the process. Otherwise, it does just become super dry and rote, and you are only focused on you lose the forest because you can only see trees in front of you. So while a client may not explicitly pay for fun, I think we can be intentional, and that's one of the awesome things I think about the culture at Funsize is all of us are. I think we like to have fun, and we like to. We don't take ourselves too seriously, and in my experience, at least, whenever we engage with a client and we let that out, I think that it elevates the experience and everyone ends up having fun, and I think they appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think to add on to that, whenever we include them, in some of those moments or in workshops, activities, whatever you want to call it, like I've had clients say like, "This is the funnest meeting I've had all year." You know, or these are the types of meetings that I love to come to. Yeah. Because it's like a different take. It's a different, like, I don't know if it's like lower stakes or just a different type of engagement with other people or whatever. But I feel like that sometimes our clients look for that too, for those releases. Yeah. So it's kind of cool for that to happen.
Absolutely. I think it has to have fun or to bring fun back into the process. I think it is an intentional thing, and I think it has to happen all up and down the layers. Like you as an individual have to keep that in your head in your personal life, like you have to be taking care of yourself and your significant others and having, people that you care about, like making sure that those relationships are fun and healthy. And then within the work environment, each individual has to bring their own form of what fun means to them, because we're all different. But like the interaction of the diversity of fun, it makes a really interesting energy. And then we as the design team have to be intentional about it. I think the company culture, like up and down all of the layers, I think is you have to make sure that you're being intentional about it to keep it there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And whenever you're saying that, it made me also think like fun can be so many different things.
Yeah.
You know, it could mean, I don't know, I'm not going to go into that, but like that's a thing I think about too is like fun to me is the different type of fun to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at different times of the day, different times of the whatever, it doesn't really matter. But
totally.
Very ambiguous general word, but I think that it's really important. Well, cool. Yeah, I know. Like I said, like I know you experiment and you know you bring things to show the rest of the studio, and you're like, oh, I just spent a few hours the other night and whipped up this thing, and we're like, holy crap, like this is like insane. So it's really cool that you are passionate about doing things that keep you creative, keep your creative energy bar up. I think because I think that's important to see as a peer.
Yeah.
Also because it encourages others to kind of like do those things that make themselves
yeah, and really
energized as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I do that, or I bring that here and share it, is because, and not because I want people to like, I'm not like, oh, look at what I did, so much as like I love the collaborative nature of creativity, and like my hope is like it helps other people feel comfortable, just in the way that like fun, we have different definitions of fun, creativity is different, and I'm like, I want to see what other people are into, and I want to see like how they express their creativity, and it maybe if I can set a habit of showing off stuff, other people will feel more comfortable bringing their creativity and showing it off. It's like going back to the camera club thing. Like that's really what that was about. Is like the people who participate were all different kinds of photographers, and we all have different skill sets. Being open and sharing, like, hey, I just want to do this because it's fun. I might not. I know I'm not as good as someone else, but like just having us all together and bouncing that creative energy off of one another is where all the magic happens, and like what makes things so fun and rewarding.
That sounds like it'd be a cool like community event, like a meetup, like creativity club. Just show everybody what you're working on.
Yeah,
that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, spoiler alert: if I ever get selected for Magic Hour, I want to do another craft afternoon and just have everyone bring a personal project, and we all get in the same room and just work together. And yeah,
that reminded me to tell you about an idea that I had the other day that is connecting to that.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, the other thing, the one other thing that I've been dying to pick your brain about is I think that you have manifested this, not intentionally. I just think that you noticed it early on, and it's something that I've been seeing more and more and more. Is it's like I was like jotting down some notes earlier, and it's like the modern day designer and the power of problem solving. And there's a lot there, I think, because about maybe a year or so ago, we had a company update, and you were very emphatic about we are problem solvers. Yeah, we put designs together and do things on top of a rectangle that lights up, and you can tap the keys on it or whatever. But at the end of the day, like you're just thinking about how to solve a problem. Yeah, and that stuck with me. And I think that the reason why it stuck with me is because of all of the, things that we see or that I see like on LinkedIn or The Verge or wherever media outlets are popping off of the day, the rise of, and I don't want to go too far into AI because that's something that's talked about so much. I don't want to talk about that. Yeah. But the point is that there's power in like your human brain.
Yes. Yeah.
And I just wanted to kind of like dip into that real quick because like like you said, like things change really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was about a year ago whenever you said that, or maybe a year and a half, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so like, where was your brain whenever you said that? Because it's so true, you know, like, and one more thing of that, because like, and to go a little bit into AI, is there's so much prevalence in the industry now that it's, and also another very old topic is the commoditization of design,
Mm-hmm.
that being able to use your brain to solve the problem, to leverage the tool is like where we are right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know, like there's like, I just ranted a lot, but like going back in time, like what was going through your head whenever you kind of like started thinking about that? And
So I'll go back to when I first created that definition for myself. It was when I was interviewing at Duo, the cybersecurity company. They were looking for a principal designer, and when I was putting my interview together, I thought to myself, like, people still don't know what a principal designer is. Like, we at Funsize don't know, but I was thinking, okay, what does it mean to me to be a principal designer? You've been in the industry long enough to have a design philosophy or a design belief system. You should be able to articulate what it means to you to do design or to be a designer. And when I sat down and really started thinking about it, and maybe this is because I'm not a capital D designer, but like eased into it from development and have always, struggled to identify as a designer. I realized, well, design at the end of the day really is about problem solving. Mm-hmm. Whether if you're a developer, you're solving a problem and you're using code. If you're a designer, you're solving a problem and even in design, there's so many different ways. It might be pixels on a screen. It might be graphic layout on a poster. It might be information architecture or wireframes. But ultimately, you are trying to solve a problem. And if you can think of yourself as a problem solver, what I call it, like, you give yourself many more degrees of creative freedom than if you only think of yourself as a visual designer. Not to say that like there's anything wrong with, like, if you're a visual designer and that's your jam and that's all you want to do, that's awesome. Like, that's going to make you a fantastic visual designer, and there's nothing wrong with that specialization. You're solving a problem. But I think, like, when you think of yourself as a generalist designer, you're getting closer to the abstraction of thinking of yourself as more problem solving than pure visual design problem solving. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where my head was when I came up with that definition. And it's just something that I've always carried around internally. And I guess, a year and a half ago, as I was growing into the head of design role, I felt like, oh, well, this is the team. Like, how do we set the vibe or the philosophy of the design org, or how do I share my knowledge or my definition of design with the team? And that's kind of was the impetus for sharing that out with the rest of y'all. And part of that impetus was, as you mentioned, commoditization and artificial intelligence, or whatever tool you want to bring up. If you're only thinking of yourself as this one thing, you're potentially like putting yourself in a precarious position where you may not have a job. Mm-hmm. And my hope was to imbue in everyone the realization that, like, you're not just like an amazing visual designer, or you're not just good at interaction design. Ultimately what you're really good at is problem solving. Mm-hmm. Because as consultants, we're not just building a client's app where we're interacting with other human beings. Like, we're forming a relationship with our clients. Even if it's just for 6 months, we've got to get in, form a really tight bond of trust, solve their problems for them. And ostensibly it's this app, but as you know, there's 7 other layers of problems that you're solving for them that have nothing to do with that app, whether it be politics or interpersonal dynamics. So yeah,
I think that, honestly, it took me a little bit to sit with that, because, as we we're mentioning before, like, we are more often than not responsible for delivering things.
Yeah.
And so you have to just do the stuff to make the things, which that's not to say we don't care about it, but like to intentionally say, like, either like stepping away from the screen to like sit with a problem and to think about it and to think about solutions that could solve that problem before you even put a finger on a key is kind of something I've been kind of challenging myself to do more because I just run into brick walls by staring at the screen all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think about that a lot, and
well, I have one layer deeper of that.
Okay.
We're all problem solvers.
Let's hear it.
Then you can sit with the chew on this one and come back to me and tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. I have yet to disprove this theory or this hypothesis, but I think I mentioned this in that talk, which was we're all problem solvers and all of us are solving the same problem. There's only one problem.
Is this like Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Is this like that?
It's not, but it's kind of, but there's only, the thing at least what I believe is that we're only ever solving one problem over and over again.
I agree with that.
And that problem is the problem of communication. At the end of the day, everything that we do is to facilitate communication between one human being and another or a group of human beings. But it invariably, if you cut the problem down to the core, it's about trying to translate what's in one person's brain and turn that into something that another person's brain can understand, and back and forth.
100% agree with that.
Okay, that wasn't a hard sell.
100% agree with that.
Awesome. Okay.
I'm going to think about that a lot, but I think that you're absolutely right.
I've thought about everything that I've ever designed in my life, and it all comes down to, this is just a problem of facilitating communication between humans.
It reminds me of this graphic that I have saved in multiple places, multiple computers, from a company called New Haircut. It's like one of the early, I don't know if you're familiar with that, like a earlier problem framing, like Sprinty related company. I don't know what they're doing now, but they had this graphic that was like a Venn diagram, and it was like user value, business impact. And it's like, where do those overlap? Yeah. And it's like, if we're using the right words and the right strategy to do those things, we're going to hit that spot, and it's going to be success. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. I think that's exactly right. Not a hard sell at all, Lee. Yeah. Randomly back to the idea, back to the thought of AI. And I've been thinking about, I haven't mentioned this to anybody, something I thought about the other day. I get frustrated with myself whenever I'm trying to get out a piece of paper and draw something, or writing words on paper. I'm like really frustrated on two levels, because I can type way faster than I can track with my thoughts faster than writing. So I get really frustrated. And then this is like very embarrassing, but using AI based tools and generators and stuff, they've made me start to get frustrated with myself because I'm not fast enough. Is that weird?
That's interesting. I don't know if it's weird or not, but that's interesting.
It's just an observation the other day. I was like,
so if you're you put a prompt in to a LLM and it can spit out an entire book in a minute, and you're like, man, I can't even get a paragraph down.
Right.
Yeah.
This is an interesting observation the other day. I was just like, I need to take a step back.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if other people feel that way.
I don't think it really bothers me. I mean, I still have I have that challenge of if I have something in my head and I'm writing, I definitely have to, there's buffering because this does not move as fast as this. It doesn't really bother me though. I kind of, if anything, I think, because AI is going to.
It's okay to say it's a weird thing of me. It's okay to say it's.
No,
weird.
I'm just saying I'm genuinely thinking about that. Yeah. But I think if anything, it makes me embrace my humanness and my flaws even more, because I'm not an AI. The reason that can happen so fast is because it's not a human. It's a gigantic equation running on thousands of servers that's been trained on the sum total of the internet. So yeah, it's going to be fast.
Yeah. on that note, I think that we had a good chat, and I appreciate you coming to sit down. And I am really excited that you're back in the office.
Me too.
And I can leech off of your creativity and your expertise because I really enjoy it. So
The feeling's mutual. I missed everyone, and I missed all of that energy for sure. Like I said, that diversity and having everybody's own take on things, man, you miss it when you don't have it for sure. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then maybe in the future we'll put out another episode where we dive into what you're doing while you're away.
Talk. Yeah, totally.
So stay tuned for that, and until then, we will keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on. That's a good one. Yeah.
See y'all.